Do you know that you can buy a DAC using the ES9038 DAC chip for under $30 on the web? That is the same DAC chip used in my €3,000 Mytek DAC. Of course you will understand that there must be a quality difference. The DAC chip alone does not say much about the sound quality of that device. It's like mounting the wheels of a Porsche on a Volkswagen Beetle. When I compare the first Mytek Brooklyn that uses the ES9038 DAC chip to the Mytek Brooklyn 2 that uses the ES9038 DAC chip, I hear no real difference. The reason for this is that they both use the same power supply, the same quality circuit design and so on. There's a difference to be measured between those two chips, but it's minute and, as far as I can judge, irrelevant to the sound quality. Management always wants further perfection, not primarily for higher sound quality, there are not that much managers that know about sound quality, but for marketing reasons. Like with washing powder that washes even whiter every year. You can blame them, but the fact is that there are shiploads of people that love to buy something new just for the sake of having something new. Yuval Noah Harari writes in his book Homo Deus that we humans are so successful because we always want to achieve more. This makes that we have a natural desire for new things. Marketeers use this and we consumers are willing to take the bite. The problem for us consumers is to know if a new technology or product is marketing or a real improvement. And if it's a real improvement to all of us. Let me just pick a few marketing focuses and discuss my view on them. From the old days of digital audio we got the 44.1 kHz sampling rate. At that time the decision was made that since we humans can't hear above 20,000 Hz, a bandwidth of 20 to 20,000 Hz should suffice. The Nyquist theorem then dictates a sampling rate of minimal 40 kHz, being 2 times the required bandwidth frequency. Due to the limited technical possibilities and 70s, the sampling frequency of 44.1 kHz was chosen. But when digital techniques offered higher sampling rates, it appeared these did offer higher sound quality, provided the playback system was of sufficient quality. People that only use their calculator and not their ears could tell you this is BS, and some of them proposed the so-called scientific double-blind test to prove it. Others just knew that math was right and Nyquist should not be questioned. In my video The Truth About Nyquist and Why 192 kHz does make sense, I explain why Nyquist is right but they are wrong. In short, the reconstruction filter for 44.1 kHz needs to be so steep that the filter's artifacts degrade the sound quality severely. So a higher sampling rate is not needed for more bandwidth, but to allow the use of milder reconstruction filters. Someone commented on my review of the Mini DSP SHD Studio DAC room correction system that it was no option for him since it internally was limited to 96 kHz sampling rate. I use this system and prefer to use it over skipping it and playing 384 kHz tracks. I also prefer it over using MQA function in my DAC. Not that those higher sampling rates and the MQA system are of little value. I really would love to have a front end that does 384 kHz sampling, MQA and DAC. And I might someday. But for now I have to choose for the function that improves the sound quality the most, and in my case that's DAC. My guess is this will almost always be the case unless you have a listening room that is acoustically optimized. In my case that might risk my 44-year lasting marriage, and I prefer listening with my wife to a slightly compromised sound quality than alone with the best stereo, if there is such a thing. Another contemporary buzzword is multi-room. the ability to play music synchronized over more than one playback system throughout the house. I get listening to a centrally stored music in more than one room. And I know people that use true multi-room twice a year at parties. My guess is their number is very limited, since most houses are not designed to have multi-room parties. Still, I noticed this function is a box that many people want to tick regardless if they need it. Don't get me wrong, if you do organize multi-room parties, go for the multi-room option, for there is nothing wrong with this function. But I see people decide on plastic boxes with processed sound to have multi-room. They probably never use it apart from once when the neighbor passes by and it's show-off time. I know those brown boxes with speaker wires are not as sexy, but they might be able to produce the music in a more emerging quality. Surround systems are rather popular, especially the system in a box types, and they may be great for watching movies where a large part of the information is visual. But for playing music only, you will notice that for this application half of the gear you bought is not used. So if you buy a €2000 surround system and play stereo music, 3 of the 6 channels, center and 2 rears, are not used. If you would have spent that same amount of money on stereo gear, you would have had clearly a better sound quality. Don't get me wrong, if you love to watch movies, go for the full-fledged Dolby Atmos setup. But if music is your thing, buy a stereo setup and play the movie sound over it when not listening to music. I've made a mix with my setup 1. This is the best setup I use for stereo listening, but it's also the left and right channel of my surround setup by using a special home theater input that was added. As soon as I switched on my NAD T758V3 AV receiver, the trigger output of that engages the power amp input on the AudioNote Soro SE amp. The quality of the surround setup is lower than that of my setup 1, but it is of sufficient quality. Furthermore, the Dirac room correction system in the NAD also corrects for the tonal balance of the speakers, so although being of different quality and make, they sound well together. We all look for solid facts to base our choices on. The problem is that in the end it is impossible to judge the book on its cover and a stereo on its specs. Is a 100 watt amp better than a 70 watt amp? Well, 100 is more than 70, isn't it? But why then has my AudioNote Soro SE amp in my setup 1, my best, only 2 times 15 watts, where in my cheapest setup 3 the NAD C316 BEE amp has 2 times 40 watts, both in 8 ohms by the way. And the Marantz PMKI Pearl Lite in my setup 2 even delivers 2 times 70 watts in 8 ohms. So unless I'm nuts, and some say I am, wattage is an unreliable indicator for sound quality. What about distortion then? Well, there are several ways to measure several kinds of distortion, not only in amps but also in speakers, DACs, CD players and so on. For the non-technical consumer it's virtually impossible to make sense from these figures. And even if he could, it's only one facet of the total. Compare it with cars. The amount of horsepower doesn't define the acceleration time, since there are also other factors that play a role, like the weight of the car, the way the suspension is able to support the wheels to get grip, whether the engine is turbocharged and thus need time to have the turbo spinned up, and so on. And then the road holding characteristics are still unknown, as is the stopping power of the brakes, and so on. Remember that when 4 valves per cylinder became popular, it increased the horsepower. Unfortunately, it also reduced torque in the atmospheric engines. Then how can you buy a car? What about a test drive? And read reviews? Well, they are subjective, you might say, and you are right, but the entire car judgment is subjective, as is judging audio equipment. See my video Audiophiles and Snake Oil. That's when the cry for double-blind testing comes up again. When technicians with limited to no high-end listening experience claim a scientifically based double-blind test is needed, they usually claim it's a simple test to set up. It's like proving the top speed of a sports car and to do it scientifically demand a test track to be driven in both directions within a limited time frame. For that is what science demands. But then use a dirt track instead of tarmac and have the driver do the run while still suffering from a jet lag. For it's the car, it's the power to weight ratio and the aerodynamics that define the speed. Setting up real scientific double-blind tests for audio starts with designing a setup that can be switched to both signals by the test person. In so-called ABX test, A and B are two different test signals and the test person has to determine whether A or B is equal to X. But it should be switched so that the switching does not influence the sound quality, nor should the switching make a noise that could be identified by the test person. Furthermore, the test setup should not limit the listening experience in any way. Acoustics should not cause problems either. I know of a double-blind test that had to prove the audibility of audio above 20 kHz using electrostatic loudspeakers that rolled off at 18 kHz. But let's assume we managed to build a perfect system. Then he or she must be allowed to listen as many times as he or she wants. If there is a difference heard, you will see that the test person will be able to give the right outcome more and more. In the beginning it might be 50-50, but over time the result will get higher, up to a point where there is no further improvement, which is the time to end the test. That might take quite some time and then you only have the experience of one person. So you do need to do the same test with a number of other people that also must be allowed several hours to even days to come to a conclusion. And then you have only proven that people hear a difference using that set of equipment. You must then research whether the difference in the sound is not due to artifacts of the equipment. You could do that by using a completely different setup and ask the test persons to do the same test again. Having a positive output again, you can then say that it is audible on two different setups. That's not fully conclusive, but probably acceptable. Still there are those that think that a scientific test can be done on an evening, sometimes even with several people at the same time. I've tried to explain that focusing on the properties or specifications of an audio device will not bring you the best choice. Far better is to see if you can try that component in your home situation after you have orientated yourself using trusted magazines, websites and YouTube channels. For the rest, hang on to what I have said in my video High End and the Acquired Taste about the equipment I review and how I make selections. Figures, features and specifications give a false feeling of security. As I've said many times to viewers that ask what to buy, feel the force, young viewer, feel the force. In the meantime I work on the next video that is due next Friday, if all goes well. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe to this channel or follow me on the social media so you will be informed when new videos are out. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Many thanks to those viewers that support this channel financially. It keeps me independent and thus trustworthy. If you like to support my work too, the links are in the comments below this video in YouTube. I'm Hans Beekhuizen, thank you for watching and see you in the next show or on thehbproduct.com. And whatever you do, enjoy the music.